Good morning, everyone. Mike and Corey are back together after I got some vacation time last week. Came back with a tan of some sort. I'll probably peel here in the next few days. While Corey held down the fort. I don't know. I don't know if I was missed much because the stock market went up almost 5% and reclaimed not the highs of the year, but reclaimed at least where the year started. I imagine Steve probably be like, if we could always get 5% when Mike's on vacation, just take weeks off, So maybe I'll start lobbying for that. But we have three exciting topics for you today. One is Corey's going to take it with the downgrade by Moody's of the U.S. credit rating. And then I'm going to talk about kind of a follow-up topic, which we've talked about before, is just 23&Me and what happens with their data. Well, we're finding out what's going to happen with it. And then last is the importance of a will, just because I see a bank offering free wills, and that makes me interested. So this is the financial education presentation. You must do your own due diligence on anything that you hear in this presentation. More disclaimer information can be found on AnkerstarWealth.com, and the opinions expressed are mine and Corey's alone. So Corey started us off with the big news, which is Moody doing some downgrades.
Yep, on Friday after the close, Moody's was the sole credit rating agency that still had the United States government at the highest credit rating possible. And after the close on Friday, they dropped them down one tier. So I think there's 21 levels of credit worthiness, and they're now in the second best out of those 21. So long way to fall, I guess, or maybe they're still pretty high. I don't know. It depends how you want to think of that. A lot of people, you might hear news like that and think, oh no, what does the stock market think? What does the stock market think? That's really not the right question in this case. In this case, we're going to want to see, what does the bond market think? So, because here's what the government doesn't want, the United States government. There's a few different reasons for this, but you don't want rates to get too high, especially towards the longer end of the curve. It's going to make refinancing the government's debt harder and harder with any incremental increase. So both the 10-year and the 30-year were up more than 1% today. That's a decent size move for one day. It's certainly a distinct move related to the Moody's downgrade. Does it mean that the United States government is no longer worthy of being an investable asset for credit investors? Absolutely not. Your money would still be safe in all of these things. What it means is, though, the government needs to be really careful. And what did we talk about last week? We talked about the one big, beautiful bill that the administration is trying to push through, that has the tax cuts and that will increase the annual deficit and, of course, the government's overall debt burden. Now, the plan is, you increase debt, but you outgrow the debt. So you grow GDP so quickly that more debt doesn't matter. It sounds very nice. Will it play out that way? It hasn't in a couple of recent attempts, not to say that it couldn't this time. So the government needs to be mindful. I'm almost wondering, Mike, does this downgrade, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, does it put any pressure on the one big, beautiful bill? Do they need to tighten anything on there, or will it get through as planned? So I don't have an opinion there. The bond market is telling the government, at least for today, they're saying, hey, you need to be careful. You need to be careful here. This isn't a total non-event. Maybe the market is kind of agreeing with Moody's a little bit in a sense on the bond side of things. But what do you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, the things they may cut is as far as giveaways or tax cuts, they might not cut as much, just because, to be the most credit worthy means you don't spend more than you take in. I mean, that's whether that's our house, our household, or that's a government, or it's a company. If you don't spend everything that you take in, you are more credit worthy. So that's where it could get squeezed. And I think the initial bill that I read about, it got rejected somewhere by conservative Republicans,
Yeah.
mainly because of the spending side. So that's
Yeah.
probably where it gets. The other side, of course, is to cut the actual expenditures, which is what DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, has been doing. And obviously they made some progress, but they're not cutting trillions of dollars.
Right.
So
We'll see. That tax bill is going to be interesting. And then, um, as far as the actual Moody's decision, it doesn't fundamentally change anything, but it does reignite or reopen the door for that conversation that, hey, government debt it's a problem, and it does need to be addressed probably, sooner rather than later to some extent. So that's that.
well, let's hope that the government debt doesn't cause a problem when they start foreclosing on our national parks, right? No, someone will come up, they'll be like, I own this piece of Yellowstone, I'm taking it. Go for it.
Mike,
Okay.
I watched a documentary. This must have been like 2014 or something, 2013, or maybe even earlier. And they were worried about the government debt then, which, rightfully so, right? We want our country to be stable and successful forever, of course. But they were like, if things got bad, they think we could sell Alaska for $5 trillion or something. And I was like, whoa, this documentary was getting kind of out there. Some of their ideas. Anyway, it was funny.
5 trillion. I think the debt's like 35 trillion. So we
Hey,
might
it's a
have to
dent. It's a
we
dent.
might have to throw in, Oregon as well. I don't know. Okay, well, one thing is, companies going in debt, companies going bankrupt. I know one that we've talked about that a lot of people have done is 23&Me, which you send in your saliva sample and they do a full DNA analysis, and then you find out if your parents are really your parents, and who your cousins are, and all kinds of fun things like that. Um, Anyways, that company went bankrupt a few months ago. And anytime something goes bankrupt, they start selling the assets. Well, the big asset they talk about is the data. Guess what? My data's in there. So there is a way, and we mentioned it last time, there is a way to remove your data from that data set. I did not. I don't know. I guess I'm not too worried about it, but there is a way. But that data has been sold to Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. And when I saw it, it didn't surprise me at all. Not that I know Regeneron, but that a pharmaceutical company would buy it, because genetic data, the future of medicine is to quit making medication that just covers 200 million people. It's to make medicine that's more customized for certain genomes. It'll do certain things. It's more, instead of using a shotgun blast, it's more of a rifle. And a Regeneron buying a 23&Me, it's kind of interesting. They might be buying their future customer base. So, how much money they cut in this deal. Actually, let me share my screen. I'll even show you the article. This could be concerning to some people. $256 million they sold it for. And I went ahead, and I won't spend much time on this page, but I'll show you Regeneron as far as on their website. So unlocking the power potential of genetic medicines, and their CEO basically saying that that this is kind of what they're doing now. I assume their website didn't update because they just bought this thing today, but if you are concerned about this, then you should absolutely go to the 23&Me website, delete your data, follow the process, and get it off. Now, what I could see happening someday, I think the number of pieces of junk mail that I get in my mailbox has started to actually decline. Maybe that's because the political cycle's over, but I could see someday a Regeneron sending me a piece of some kind of advertisement. hey, your genes show that you're deficient in this or that or whatever, or you're gonna, something could affect you when you're 70 years old. We have this kind of medicine that might be able to help you. Now, that could bother you. That might not. I mean, to me, it doesn't bother me to receive that. I'll be like, well, that's interesting. Doesn't mean I'm going to buy it. It might actually be nice to find out that I actually need it. But that's certainly the potential, and that seems like something Regeneron might want to do. I mean, as far as I did look at the stock, I won't pull it up. We don't hold this, but I'm actually interested to do a little more research into it. It's like a $60 billion company. So to spend $256 million, it's like 0.5% of revenue, so or 0.5% of their market cap. One other article, Corey, what do you think? Did you do 23&Me?
No, I just went with what my family told me. They said, you're some of this, you're some of that. So hopefully they're right. But no, I'm with you. Data is everything, and so I'm sure that their purchase here will be valuable to them.
I just went with what my family told me. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then another article that I saw that I thought was really interesting is it is very important to have a will. Certainly, if you have money and you have something to give away, you should have a will. Fifth Third Bank, which is actually headquartered out of Cincinnati, hey, one of my hometown banks. I don't bank with Fifth Third, but they're a good local bank. They are giving customers free wills through a company called Trust and Will, or they'll give you $299 towards actually setting up a trust. So they're using another company, online provider, Trust and Will, and suggesting that. And I know Steve and I did this show last year where there was actually happened to be another Cincinnati person where the guy had made a will he filled out his online when he set up his brokerage account, and he put his girlfriend as his beneficiary. He was in his 20s when he did this, and the guy never married anyone. He had a nice career. I think it was with Procter and Gamble. Built up, I want to say, $750,000, and he passed away. And guess what? The designation that he put on his brokerage account to his girlfriend, who he was no longer dating, he probably broke up with her 30 years ago. She was the beneficiary of that $750,000. Now that's a nice surprise there. If you're her, you're like, yeah, who's that guy I dated? Oh, I remember him now because he's about to give me all that money. And that's why it's very important to have an accurate will and trust when you get to certainly a level where you got houses or businesses involved. So, Corey, filling out the will, did you have to make any designations like, I have 5 kids, so do I say, well, this kid gets this thing or this, or is it just, split it evenly? Corey, do you have any heirlooms? You're like, oh, little Johnny gets this.
Yeah, we just split it evenly. We got the 2 kids, and hopefully they won't be getting that anytime soon, and we can take care of ourselves too.
I always laugh because, and I'll tell you a funny story. So, I was talking to my kids one day, and my youngest kid was asking me, he's like, so he goes, so I'm probably the last person that's going to leave the house. And I said, yeah. And he's like, someday you're going to get another house, right? I said, yeah, I might. I'm not sure. And he's like, well, so do I get this house then? And I'm like, well, that's not how that works. There's a mortgage, and the last kid in the house, it's almost like the last kid gets everything. That was what he was hoping for. Unfortunately, that's not. And my will is very similar to yours. It's not like I'm going through saying, well, this was my 2nd grade perfect spelling award. I'm going to give this to my daughter. This was when I won wrestling or whatever. Give this to my son. They can all throw it away equally, is what I'm figuring. But well, that's what we got. Hopefully none of us need to access our will anytime soon, but it is very important that you do have a will, so things don't go into the state to figure out. With that, we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.